All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. A very warm welcome to all of our listeners here. This is the 9th edition of our antibiotic reduction expert series brought to you by Biomin. Today's topic is poultry disease prevention, a healthy start at hatch. Now, in a change up from our normal format, we've brought in 2 experts, both of whom are my colleagues from Biomin rather than our single speaker. And so I'm going to introduce the first one to you right now. Fernando Lima is joining us, a poultry technical sales manager. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ryan.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience members who haven't met you in person?
Okay, like Ryan said, my name is Fernando Lima. I was graduated as a poultry veterinarian 30 years ago, and I've been in the poultry business for nearly 30 years, within Biomin for 7, and I'm, let's say, consulting our customers around Europe to provide solutions and strategies to counteract the main problems in the field. In the short.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. I know that our customers very much appreciate that expertise that you bring to them in the field and their operations. Our second expert today is Luis Valenzuela, who's a product manager at Biomin. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, dear audience. Fernando.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be with you today to discuss related topics to poultry production. As you mentioned, I'm the global product manager for our product line Poultry Star. I'm originally from El Salvador. My background is a degree in industrial management, a bachelor in animal production focused in animal nutrition for monogastric animals, a master's in fish nutrition, and I've been with Biomin for already like 4 years, nearly 4 years, and I'm still fresh and motivated as the first day.
Absolutely glad to hear that. The energy just keeps going. So let's get into our topic then. Thank you. We're looking forward to the perspectives that each of you bring to today's topic, which, as we said, was poultry disease prevention. Fernando, why don't you get us started with a little bit of context? Why are we talking about disease prevention, how it relates to our main theme, which is antibiotic reduction, and why at hatch? What's so important about getting an early start here?
Yeah, to understand why antibiotics have been used frequently and understand how the immune system works, it's important to understand how the bird starts from the very first beginning. So a healthy start at hatch is crucial to understand that the immune system develops from right away. Whatever we do to enhance natural defenses will be on this direction to build a healthy start. And we have solutions. We understand what's going on in the field. So our goal is really to focus on anything that could help to enhance this. Okay, shall I start from the first slide?
Please go right ahead.
Okay, so the first point is to understand there are different external and internal factors that affect the quality of the old chicks. Marked in the red circles, we know that we can help on nutrition, on management, medication, on all therapies that could help controlling predisposing factors. However, and marked on purple circles, we cannot control the genetic, but we can control the rest. So the next slide will exactly come with the question: is there a single factor to consider to ensure the good quality of the old chick? Let's see. So first of all, it's important to understand there are multiple factors to consider to ensure the old chick quality, starting from the management, because the management can control partly the increase of bacterial load, which is crucial for the animal's health. The hatchery egg sanitation, we know they play an important role, not just for vertical transmission, but also for the general sanitation. Eggs laid on litter is crucial for breeders to avoid vertical transmission. And the house downtime, insufficient house downtime allows bacterial populations in the house to build after each flock. Poor litter quality and increased stocking density is also frequently associated with necrotic enteritis, for example. With more birds in a particular space, and intensive production is like that, there's more moisture that needs to be dissipated. So this increased litter moisture creates a favorable environment for Clostridium to grow. And high stocking density can also cause stress, which leads to a reduction in immunity. So the diet is also widely recognized as having a strong impact on the incidence of necrotic enteritis. So since indigestible dietary protein cannot be broken down and absorbed in the upper part of the digestive tract, it can lead to high concentrations of protein in the lower portion of the digestive tract that can then act as a substrate for the gut microbiota. So the fermentation of these proteins by these bacteria produces unfavorable byproducts such as amines and ammonia, and increase the pH of the lower part of the intestinal tract, which encourages the proliferation of pathogenic bacteria such as Clostridium. That's why we mentioned Clostridium as a normal issue, sometimes triggered by immediate cocci development. And of course, last but not least, mycotoxins, which can damage the intestine and immune suppression. And with that, the next slide. We must understand also that the most exposed internal surface to the changes in the environment is the gastrointestinal tract. So let's say that's the internal external surface. And intestine microbiota has an important role in animal health and production. So alterations in the microbial profile can influence the development of the physiology and immunology of the gastrointestinal tract, as well as resistance to enteric infections. This is done through their interactions with the intestinal lining and underlying lymphoid tissues. A well-established intestinal microbiota is crucial for the health of our animals, especially if we expect high production performance, which is the case. So microorganisms can directly interact with the lining of the gastrointestinal tract and change the physiology of the tract and immune status of the bird. Next.
Great, hold on. If I could stop you right there, I want to jump on this opportunity to remind everyone who's listening that we've got an interactive session today. So as we proceed through this material, if you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat function, which you'll find in the lower portion of your screen in order to submit your questions. We'll try to address as many of those as we can during the later Q&A session. It's also interactive in a second way, which is that we can ask questions to the audience to get a feel for where you are on these positions and on these issues. So let's go ahead and use this opportunity to launch our first poll question to the audience. All right, it's going to come up right here on your screen, and this is based on Fernando's comments just a moment ago. Which factor plays a critical role on the development of initial dysbiosis? So please go ahead and select the one that you think is most appropriate, whether you think it's excessive hygiene at the hatchery, vertical transmission of pathogens, horizontal transmission at the barns, all of the above, or only B and C, vertical and horizontal transmission. Go ahead and choose the answer that you think is most appropriate. And we've got plenty of answers coming in right now. We're going to be able to show those results to you in just a moment and check your sense of this with our resident expert on the topic. So we have more than half of you have voted already. I'm going to go ahead and give you just one more moment here, and then we will close the poll and look at those results. Great. So Fernando, this is where our audience is on this topic right now. You can see that more than half of everyone who participated says all of the above, all of these factors are critical in the development of initial dysbiosis. Is that the case?
That's a curious test. Can you go back to the test, please? So I'm happy that 32% respond only B and C, because I feel that most of the time, I would say 90% are vertical and horizontal transmission. About excessive hygiene at hatchery, I don't think it's a big issue, to be honest, but I'm glad that everybody stayed on the last two answers, and especially with 32% for B and C. But I would prefer everybody to be on second and third answer.
Excellent. So thank you for helping us out with that.
Yeah. Well,
please go ahead.
Anyway,
with your...
thanks. So, which opportunities in antibiotic-free production are there? This brings us to the question. Considering the challenges we just discussed, how do we design an antibiotic-free program, because this question will arise, that satisfies consumer demands for a safe and quality food supply, as well the producers' demands for healthy livestock that can perform at their optimum? Of course, from the consumer side, good quality food is crucial, and non-antibiotic use at all. From the producer side, they want an optimum performance and a healthy livestock. So this comes next to, I think to move. This comes to the situation we have now. Natural feed additives have been receiving increased attention as viable options to help us obtain this goal from the consumer side and from the producer side. And we'll see how. So how to decrease the incidence of microbial pathologies in day-old chicks and early production stages? Let's see. Which solutions? So the solution, of course, is to promote dysbiosis. A healthy microbiota contains a balanced composition of many classes of bacteria, both physiological or pathogenic. And the best is when this favorable balance of microbes maintains integrity, preventing pathological inflammation and disease. Next. So a big gut stressor in early stages of production is the imbalanced microbiota or non-specific dysbiosis. In situations where the gut microbiota becomes imbalanced, the biological defenses against pathogenic agents are less effective. And this imbalance is known as dysbiosis as well. It is known. Dysbiosis occurs when the gut environment is altered. This can occur through many means, including the use of antibiotics, randomly, without any sense or any direction, changes in the diet, as we mentioned, or simple infections. Dysbiosis leads to a reduction in physiological beneficial bacteria and an increase in pathogenic bacteria, like we see in this drawing. This results in damage to the epithelial barrier, increased bacterial adherence and penetration, and at the end, inflammation. When there's inflammation, there's no absorption, there's no protection. Let's come to the next slide, please. So when we mention gut health and integrity, we must remember it's directly affected by stress, especially when we talk about digestive health. It's the main concern in poultry industry, as it has a high impact on production mortality rates caused by gut diseases. And traditionally, subtherapeutic doses of antibiotics have been used for just in case diseases, let's call it, as a strategy to control pathogen load, prevent diseases, and enhance growth performance. But this counteracts with the normal settlement of the beneficial microflora, with natural defense. Bacterial enteritis is an important disease in poultry. And when we have dysbiosis, we talk about dysbacteriosis at the same time. It causes loss of performance by intestinal inflammation and viral shortening, which affect performance. So by this, it means bacterial enteritis is omnipresent. It's up to us to know exactly which strategy we should put in practice to control it. The efficiency of feed digestion and absorption is also directly proportional to the healthy surface of the intestine. And this means that when we have bacterial enteritis, it's usually an inflammatory response in the gut induced by general bacterial challenge, not one single bacterial species. It's a cycle, it's a vicious cycle, starting with an oversupply of nutrients in the lumen, which leads to a shift in the microbiota, because there's too many nutrients which are not absorbed, and this induces morphological and functional alterations, which result in poor digestion of feed and absorption of nutrients, which leads again to an oversupply of nutrients in the lumen, which will feed undesirable bacteria. And this will keep going on. Next. So how do we promote dysbiosis? By the end, to promote dysbiosis, there is no straightforward approach, because this question will come later to Ryan. It's important to recognize which predisposing factors are there, and it can change from one farm to another farm. But as soon as we recognize which predisposing factors there are, we can prioritize what's causing this balance and gut integrity loss. So the point is, we should all the time enhance all natural defenses birds already have naturally, but they take time to build these natural defenses. We have to help them. And I hope Luis will help to show you how to enhance these natural defenses, because the first and most reliable mechanism, at the end, what we want to anticipate the establishment of a beneficial microflora, which is ideal even before they touch the floor, if you talk empirically. So we talk about gut integrity enhancement as a consequence. And the mucin layer is the first physical barrier in the gut for gut protection. And also remember, an optimal supply of digestible amino acids and minerals for growth, inner organs, muscles, skeleton performance is important, because we can feed the animal and also feed the microorganisms that are there. If better, we are feeding for good. So at the end, don't forget, avoid damage to the gut epithelium by mycotoxins. We know that fusarium mycotoxins are crucial to be controlled to avoid damage to the pharyngeal enterocytes. And at the end, as I mentioned before, feed additives are the products in the moment that really enhance gut health and are gaining ground support to host defense, gut barrier management and integrity, and recovery at the time, or to control microbial ecosystem directly. So there are multiple strategies to successfully modulate microbiota. And before I jump out to make questions, which strategy should I use? Remember, there's no fixed strategy. There are products we know that work as a primary utilization. However, each farm might have a customized strategy. So from probiotics, organic acids, pathogens, and mycotoxin deactivators, all combinations are possible, although we fix our attention on probiotics because we want us to prioritize establishment of a beneficial microflora as a starting point. And it will be the focus today on our session, probiotics. That's the end of my presentation. I'll be glad for questions later on, and I hope to you Ryan again.
Thank you, Fernando. We will certainly be back to you at the Q&A. Thank you for those remarks. And we're going to use this schema right here as a jumping off point to ask our audience what their favorite strategies are when it comes to gut microbiota modulation. So let's launch our second and final audience poll question right now. Which strategy do you most commonly use to avoid initial dysbiosis in day-old chicks? So if you're already using feed additives or any particular nutrition interventions here from the start, go ahead and choose the answer that best fits your situation. The answers you may select from are medicated feed at placement, probiotics at the hatchery, probiotics at placement or in the early stages, other feed additives, including some of the ones that Fernando just mentioned, or none. And we're going to let everyone go ahead and choose the answer that best fits their situations, whether it's your own operation or it's recommendation that you give. If you are in a consulting capacity, please go ahead and choose your favorite strategy. We're going to share those results. I see that more than half of our live audience has already weighed in. I'm going to give you just one more moment to choose your response, and then we're going to share those results and have a look. All right, the poll is closed. Thank you for all who participated. Let's have a look at what you had to say. And Louise, I'm going to turn to you this time as our resident expert here when it comes to probiotics. Probiotics at placement or early stages came out very favorably. 53% of the audience chose those, followed by probiotics at hatchery, medicated feed at placement at 13%, other feed additives at 10%, and no intervention was chosen by 5% of our listeners. How do those numbers reflect the best practice, what we see on the field? What are your thoughts here?
Actually, thanks, Ryan, for the question, and it is in line to what we see in practice, because so first, normally people or producers are using probiotics at placement. So once we place the birds, we start to use probiotics. However, now when it comes to the second answer in the second place, that one has proven more often now that it's good to introduce this beneficial bacteria at hatching. So this is part of the topic that we will, this is actually the core of the topic that we will cover right now. So
please go ahead.
Thank you, Ryan. So thanks, Fernando, for helping us to put into perspective most of the issues that overwhelm our poultry producers, and how important it is to have an early intervention in order to assure day-old chick quality, which will also have a greater impact when it comes to later on in the cycle. So I will talk today about probiotics. So here in your screen, you have the world of probiotics. Probably now, through the dynamics of the market, some of these categories may have changed, but kind of remain similar. So the single strain probiotics, currently the most commercial product are bacillus based, however, not 100% effective in gut or for gut immunomodulation. And we will talk about this in a moment. Then we have the multi-strain probiotics. Multi-species, multi-strain can say more than one type of bacteria inside, or same type of bacteria but different strain. Then we have the prebiotics. In the prebiotics, we have different ones. The most commonly used are the phosphoroctoligosaccharides or mannanoligosaccharides. We have single strain symbiotics, so where we have the pre and the probiotic in one formula. Then we have undefined cultures. These are products that are commonly used at hatching, so they are given at the hatchery. There is a hidden danger when it comes to give these undefined cultures, which can be the transfer of some plasmid that can confer some resistance to other bacteria, and we can talk about that in another time, or you can write me and I will be glad to talk to you regarding this. Multi-species probiotics. So we have this type of probiotics that have more than one species of bacteria. And then we have multi-species symbiotic, where we have very few products in the market. And among them, we have Poultry Star. So here I forgot to tell you that you had the definition of what are probiotics, in case that you're not familiar, but basically they are bacteria that confers benefits to the host. In this case, we're talking in the human world where we eat our probiotics every day, maybe in a yogurt or some dry aged cheese or some preserved food, that can be as well. So in the wild, the chicken will normally receive a complete gut flora from the environment, its mother feces, I'm sorry, I forgot a comma, and will consequently be protected against infections. So we have this cycle here where we have the newly born chick. So we have two scenarios. In the wild, they will be in contact with the environment, with the mother hen. So this will confer or will transfer part of the microbiota and then will proliferate and maturate and confers this protection. Now, in domesticated fowls, or which is the case of our modern poultry systems, there is no more that direct contact with the mother hen. And this comes the first polling question that you did, Ryan, where I'm glad some of the people also reply saying that excessive hygiene can also be detrimental to the day-old chick microbiota, because there's no contact, there's no transfer of this bacteria. If there may be some vertical transmission of pathogens or opportunistic bacteria that can proliferate during hatching. So it is essential to use some kind of probiotic, and we will talk about which type of probiotic can enhance or can help us to maturate or spur the maturation of the immune system when it comes and to transfer a protection to the day-old chicks. So how do we choose a probiotic to seed the gut and prime immune cells at hatching? So that's the main question, basically. Not all probiotics have the same role in the gut, and I will give you this from a scientific perspective, not from us Biomin, but what actually scientists have summarized in this beautiful paper from FAO. This is from 2016. So it's a long paper. I can give you the link later on, or the PDF. Like I said, you can contact Biomin, and then I will be glad to transfer this knowledge to you, or you can go and Google it. Then we have four major categories. I will not talk about the first two because that's more related to the bacteria itself. But now I will talk about the category 3, which is a multi-species or multi-strain probiotic. That's a category, versus single species or single strain probiotic. So they tried to compare these two. And in the fourth category, we compare the what we call, so maybe this is a new word for you, but it's called alloctonous probiotics versus autochthonous probiotic. So as you can see here down, it says the microorganisms used as probiotics, which are normally not present in the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract of animals, are referred to alloctonous. This may be, like an example, yeast or bacillus. So you can see this here. What is the main objective of this bacteria? To increase in digestion and absorption of nutrients. Why? Because they have a proteolytic, normally this type of Bacillus bacteria has a proteolytic activity. So they enhance this part, this function of the gut. Now, when we want to talk about autochthonous bacteria, is the microorganisms that are normally present as indigenous inhabitants of the GI tract. These are referred as autochthonous, autochthonous probiotics. This can be Lactobacillus or Bifidobacterium, given as an example. So these are the ones that in the paper are called as colonization resistance, which means that are the ones that competitively exclude pathogenic or opportunistic bacteria from the attachment from attaching to the epithelial layers. And also these are the ones that are in direct contact, direct contact with the immunocells, and bacteria such as Bifidobacterium has been linked to homeostasis, which is stopping the gut. So if we have this type of bacteria in the gut or in the relative abundance of the microbiome, we know that we have reached a point of maturation in the gut where we don't have a response of immunoresponses, and I'm sorry for the redundancy, and then we are stopping the bird from spending this energy in spending this energy in immunoresponses and having this energy back into its growth. So then what is the ideal probiotic? Number one, it has not to be pathogenic to the host. So it confers some benefits, be of host origin. Here we have the two types of literature, where one said that being of host origin is good, some other ones they say it's not, but I side with the one that is good, because by experience we have, in the case that we will be talking today, we have a host-specific probiotic, and we have seen multiple benefits from it. Normally, every time it is challenged, we see a benefit, so I will side with this part. Of course, this bacteria resist digestive acid juice and bile because they have to bypass the most acidic part of the stomach. Then persist in the intestine, that's essential. So it can proliferate and also colonize the gut, attached to intestinal epithelium to create that competitive exclusion, production of inhibitory substances to the pathogenic bacterial growth. So we're talking about the release of bacteriocins every time they feel a threat. And once these bacteriocins is released, then we have the counterpart of the gut, which is the defensins. So we have this constant communication between the microbiota and the host in order to naturally neutralize this type of pathogenic bacteria or opportunistic one. So immunomodulation and modification of bacterial activities within the intestine. So we know that we also have some other metabolites being produced, like short-chain fatty acids and so on, that can help us to modify these bacterial activities. So what probiotic solution can Biome present to poultry producers? So if you can see in the back, I'm not so sure that you can see it, but we have Poultry Star. So Poultry Star is our symbiotic. So we have the prebiotic inside. That was one of the questions I saw before. We have the two. So we have the prebiotic fructooligosaccharide, which is synergistically acting with our probiotic strains. So here you can see what is the aim of Poultry Star. I will not read it for sake of time because I've been also talking about all this. We are extremely proud of this product because in 2016 we received this innovation award, because it's a product that has been thoroughly researched. So we have results in different fields. The product itself is also has a complexity where we have different bacteria that is interacting together and creating a synergistic environment. We have the fructooligosaccharide that gives this benefit to this bacteria and to other bacteria in the gut, especially this creating this bifidogenic effect that we will talk a little bit later. And we also have this organic product. We have organic seal so for organic use. But today we will be talking about the symbiotic Poultry Star hatchery. It was designed to be applied in hatchlings. Its application boosts maturation of the immune system, stimulates early feeding behavior, which is very good in young birds, and seeds the gut with beneficial bacteria for a strong start. So this is the aim that I was telling you already. So Poultry Star hatchery stimulates early feeding behavior and seeds the gut with a specific bacteria for a strong start. This is the key message. Then what are the challenges, or that was another question that I saw, what are we trying to tackle when we give this type of probiotics in the hatchery? So the challenges that we have seen, or what our producers, the feedback, and also the research that we have been doing is we look to increase or to improve the body weight at first week, and this effect carries on. We also give vaccine support, so we can combine Poultry Star hatchery with cocci vaccines, and we will see part of this in vitro analysis. We also have papers that you can see that we're in the internet, where you can see that Poultry Star has been combined with different vaccines in the hatchery. We also have hydration, so that sometimes when these birds are dehydrated, so when you give Poultry Star hatchery, you can give some kind of hydration, because this is a soft gel that it has been diluted in water. So you give this part, and then we have the first week dysbiosis. This challenge is we see it very often in the commercial applications. And one of the things that we have seen a lot with Poultry Star hatchery is that it has improved greatly when it comes to the bacterial communities at placement, and especially the bifidobacterium. So we have managed to get established bifidobacterium by giving Poultry Star hatchery. Then we have initial mortality. We have also that part that we can improve. So just to give you some examples, so you can measure, we have as body weight an average from 10 to 15 grams of improvement. Mortality anywhere from 0.30% to 0.60% of a flock, so that's quite substantial. And we also have seen the increase in uniformity. And when I talk about uniformity, especially in these non-segregated poultry productions where we don't have the females and the male separate and we have them combined, we have seen the uniformity of the female birds that has increased. Of course, not only with Poultry Star hatchery, this is, like I said, just at the beginning, but then we also have some subsequent applications of Poultry Star Sol or Poultry Star ME in the feed, or Sol in the water. So what are the features of this product? Across the line of Poultry Star, we can see here that we have support of immune system development, capacity of colonization, and I would like to graphically talk to you about all of these, but I don't have the time. However, like I said, you can just write me, we can have a video conference and so on, and we can talk about all this if you have any doubt. Define bacteria, host specific, and we have that is a symbiotic. So all these that I was talking to you before, but what are the features of Poultry Star hatchery only? So it's a hatchery, this hatchery is a water soluble version. It means that it's a powder, so you will get a powder and then you dissolve it in the water. This is an innovative application because not only this is a dry powder, is not something that you receive like a soft gel, you have to make it yourself, but it's an all-in-one product, which means that you have the carrier and you have the active compounds together, so you don't have to dilute in separate, like product A, product B, and then put it in the water. No, you just have to measure the amount of grams per you have to measure the amount of grams correlated to the amount of birds that you want to apply, and then you just dissolve it and you can apply it. And how do you apply it? Well, we have our Biomin exclusive applicator as well. So if you don't have it, we can facilitate you the applicator. And we have different ones. We have on-site devices at the hatchery, portable devices. So it's very flexible in this regard. And what have we seen then in the application? So these are in the scientific settings. Here is not commercial application. However, later I will give you one example of a commercial application. Unfortunately, here we don't have day 7, which is the first week, but we have day 14 in the first trial. So you can see in orange is body weight, kilograms. So we can see a slight difference between the control and Poultry Star. Here in the first trial was 2 grams difference. However, we can see a huge reduction in mortality from 231 to 1.39. We have also the feed intake that is increased by 2 grams. And then when we go to the second trial, so this is a set of trials that we are doing. This is the first one. Here we have the summary of the second one. We have until day 11, so control and Poultry Star. You can see here that we have a great improvement of more than 10 grams in terms of body weight. Then here we have feed intake also improved. And day 21, we have also an improvement in body weight, sorry. And we also have a decrease in mortality. And now something that we don't have here, and this is what I would like to show you, because it was one of the questions, is the improvement in microbiota. So now in the third trial, we will do the analysis of the microbiota at day 7, because we have for these ones, but it's until the end of the cycle. So many things could have happened during the rearing of the birds that can modify the microbiota, but we want to see what happens with the application of Poultry Star hatchery only. So we have done it already with Poultry Star salt concentrated given at the hatchery, which is the other product that we can use at the hatchery if you already have an applicator or you want to use it in the spray water. And we have seen modification, and especially by day 3, the establishment of bifidobacterial communities, which is critical for the maturation of the microbiome. So these are the positive results that we have seen. And this is a program in a commercial setting. So we have 50,000 birds in each of the applications. Now, the control group had the IV vaccination and the antibiotic application. So which antibiotic? They 1 to 3 methoxazole. So this was medicated at the beginning at placement. With Poultry Star, there was no vaccination, and I want to emphasize this is not something that we are promoting. This was just the customer asking not to have the birds vaccine in order to compare nothing at hatchery versus just Poultry Star and the standard application. And you can see that in terms of weight, it was quite similar. In FCR, we have a slight improvement. However, in mortality, we can see a great reduction. And what was the feedback? That the trial on both hulls were running very well without any health problem and need for extra treatment of antibiotics. So only vitamins were given, which is something that is a regular practice that they had. In terms of efficiency, we can also see an improvement by using the Poultry Star hatchery program, which is Poultry Star hatchery at the hatchery and Poultry Star sold at the farm day 1 to 3. Now here, it is one of my last slides. I want to show you the combination of Poultry Star hatchery with the vaccine in the same solution. And why I want to show you this, because many customers were asking whether or not we can assure the stability of the oocyst or the mix of the oocyst in different layers of this gel, because as you know, when you have the cocci vaccines applied at the hatchery, you have this constant steering in order to have this evenly distribution of oocysts. So here you can see the vaccine alone is here. The target is around 6,000 oocysts. However, when you mix it with Poultry Star, you can see here you have the top layer, the middle layer, and the bottom layer in that solution that we prepare. We measured along 24 hours, and you can see that the composition is quite evenly distributed. Here we have an issue, but I think it was more when we did the analytics instead of the actual results, because you can see here that is the oocysts tend not to reproduce in the solution, but here you can see that it is evenly distributed across. So with this, what do the experts say? So unfortunately, due to this situation that we have had right now with the pandemic, we haven't had so many on-site or presential conferences, but this I took it from Dansk 2019. So we have Dr. Mike Andrés that was talking about the interactions between the host and their associated microbial communities may affect their behavior, leading to a decrease in performance. So we have to keep this in mind. There is a permanent crosstalk between host and symbiotic microbiomes, which affects some functions of the gut, such as nutrient absorption. That was said by Dr. Fanny Kalenge. And then one of my favorite speakers, Dr. Mike Hagut, was talking about the intestinal microbiome modulates cellular differentiation in the immune system and the control defense against pathogens and tolerance, which is key, especially in day-old chick birds. So we need to create first tolerance to many things that they get in contact in the immune system, and then we have to create these immunodefenses against pathogens. So as a summary and conclusion, and Fernando, feel free to jump in, switching to an antibiotic-free program, as he was talking, is going to require a shift in the paradigm. Most fine means to support and maintain gut health to ensure overall flock health. Natural Fit Additives can play a role in beneficial altering gut microbiota and improve intestinal integrity physiology in immunology. And some of the favorites from Fernando and me, numerous changes to feeding management health programs will have to be made in order to succeed. So it's not only to give the probiotics, but we also have to work in the background a little bit with the biosecurity and other managements in order to assure success. Focus need to be throughout the whole production chain from hen, breeder to broiler birds, because even though you give this probiotic at hatchery, but if you have a vertical transmission of a pathogen, it will be very difficult to get rid of it. We can make sure that the birds that are not infected will not have these bugs horizontally transmitted, but the ones that are vertically transmitted already or they are contaminated, we call them as hot chicks. And I took this word from Professor Whiteman, then these birds will unlikely be beneficially affected. Then the right probiotics containing essential microbes should be part of any antibiotic reduction strategy or as a support in conventional farming. So we have also numerous experiments or trials where we have seen some kind of synergies when you give the probiotic before medicated feed and then after medicated feed to reestablish all the good bacterial population. So feel free to also contact me and I'll be happy to tell you how is this experience. So with this, Ryan, I'm open to question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis, for those remarks. And I am certain that you will be contacted. The board is lighting up here. We have a lot of questions coming through. So let's move into our Q&A session. And let me just say thank you for all of your strong interest here. If your question does not get addressed in this session in the next 10 to 15 minutes that we have, your Biomin representative will follow up and be in touch with you. So it's always a good opportunity for a deeper discussion on these topics and how Biomin can be of assistance to you. So let's get started with Fernando. I have one or two for you just to bring us back up to the let's say initial jumping off point of this discussion is what, if any, negative impacts are there from the removal of antibiotics or AGPs from a production system? What sort of things would you tend to expect as a producer who's making a shift to an antibiotic-free feeding solution?
Thanks, Ryan, for the question. As I mentioned, one of the biggest important rules is to recognize why we were using AGPs and why we were using antibiotics in general. So by cutting AGPs, it means we have a lack of control on these undesirable pathogens, mainly Clostridia. And so with that, we have solutions which are working actually with even more success, although all strategic plans and combinations should be customized depending on each farm. I've found several different situations in different parts of the world. So this is the important point to emphasize. We should recognize that anyhow, several countries which are no longer using AGPs are succeeding even better because they realize what's going on and they found out the right combination, the right solution.
Okay, and that's one of those services that you're providing out in the field, right? Is that custom service to recommend the best approach?
Exactly, both of us, from the science and research to the field. That's our goal, to discuss together, interactively, and with a positive sense. Always thinking positive helps a lot. To find out why is it happening, what are the main challenges, and then with that, we find the solutions, and it's working.
Absolutely, that's great to hear. Another one for you, Fernando, because you emphasize the importance of day-old chick quality. What can chick quality then influence, right? do you see an impact? Do you expect it to influence egg production or weight gain later on? What's the emphasis? What's the reason for this emphasis, let's say?
That's a long story, as I mentioned. I could talk about that for 1 hour on another forum. Anyhow, it's important in these days to understand the vertical transmission. I mean, most of the things that happen are a longer concept starting from breeder to broiler. And in the middle, we have the hatchery. But anyhow, the most important step is that the immune system will build their own microbiota that takes a long time. And they might take a bad microbiota. So partly, like Louis said, when you use poultry-specific microbes, it almost drives the immune system to the right way. So apart from any vertical transmission, I would say it's crucial that the first contact of this day-old chick to be healthier is with good bacteria. There's no time, because such an intensive system, it's crucial that the bird has immediate contact with the supposedly microflora it will get later on. So with this, you are driving the immune system for the right way.
And Ryan, if may I add some points to the vertical transmission point? If we want to get most of these birds or to improve the day-old chick quality, and we see that even though we apply the probiotics, we don't see so much of a result. We have to go up, as Fernando was saying, and as I was stressing at the end. We have to go up in the chain and treat the parent stock, the great-grandparent stock. We are actually working with these genetic companies, with the big ones, and sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't, but it not only relies on them, also relies on the ones who reproduce afterwards. So it will be good to go up in the chain and treat these birds in order to have healthier chicks.
Just one more single word regarding what you said, Luis. It's interesting to understand that the load of pathogens in the breeder sometimes is not a threat for the breeder itself, because it's already mature. But it might be a huge threat for the fragile young chick. So sometimes just by reducing the load of pathogens, could be with probiotics, could be with acidifiers, could be a combination. They have different strategies that are taken in the world. We reduce the challenges for the young chick. On top of that, we'll help the young chick, as we already mentioned.
Yeah.
So I have to jump in right there because you mentioned it, Fernando. We have a specific question. Can you use a product like Poultry Star Soul, and Biotronic Top Line at the same time in a breeder flock?
Yes, it is possible, and it's even additional. You don't use the pure acid on top of a probiotic. So it has to be mixed apart beforehand, and once the acid is diluted in the water, then you can apply the probiotic. You don't need to use the probiotic, for example, the soluble one, for a full day. You can use almost like a vaccine for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, but never combine the single products together because it's too strong. But
never combine in a stock solution. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. Yes. And it's important to understand that probiotics, they like acidic media, so it's beneficial.
Yeah.
And this is a concrete example of one of those tailored solutions offered by Biomin, Poultry Star and Biotronic, both being Biomin products, of course. Just for people not familiar with those, why would you tend to use that particular combination? What sort of objectives would you have when you use the organic acids and the symbiotic?
To Fernando, to me?
Who would like to?
Actually, what we see as being representative of the gut performance competence center, I can tell you that when we have this combination of the organic acids and the probiotics, we see a lot of synergy among them, and it's especially to focus on challenges that are driven by gram-negative bacteria. So we're talking about E.coli, we're talking about Salmonella, and there we have a great impact when we use the two of them. So that was another question, I think, that you had about Salmonella. It can be in broilers or in breeders. So one of the solutions that we promote a lot is a combination of Poultry Star and Biotronic. Of course, as an assurance, we also put, we would like to recommend the use of Microfix in it. But if not possible for economical reasons or whatever, we strongly recommend these two, Poultry Star and Biotronic. Then we also have other combinations with our phytogenic lines, but this is for different type of solutions.
In a general
challenge.
Actually, in countries where HGPs were massively used and antibiotics, people moved to this solution, but the goal was to use probiotics at the beginning to build a beneficial macroflora, and then when it was already established, use the acids to keep the load of pathogens really lower to avoid any attempt. So this is a combination. First, establish a beneficial macroflora, and then keep the pathogens at the low level. We need pathogens to stimulate the immune system, but not that much. And that's the acids function.
Great. Let me talk about immune system stimulation then. We've had several questions about that point as well. What's the most successful modulator of microbiota? So out of the strategies that you two have described, Louise, out of the different types of probiotics that you've explained, probiotic, single strain, symbiotic, prebiotic, all of these different terms, what is going to be the most effective and have the greatest impact?
Well, in this case, host-specific bacteria, as the ones we have in Poultry Star, we have had in vitro trials, and we have had in gut cell lines, and also in vivo trials. We have researched more than 480 strains. We own a lot of these strains, and the reason why we have these ones in Poultry Star is because throughout the research of 8 years, we realized that these are the ones that actually drive gut populations in different sections of the gut. So that's the reason why we have this type of Enterococcus faecium, this type of Lactobabacillus, and this type of bifidobacterium. Especially this bifidobacterium, you don't easily find in a probiotic bifidobacterium, like for example, the one we have animalis, because they are not that stable to produce it. The yield is very low, and so on. So for the producer of this probiotic, it's not economically sustainable sometimes. For us, our objective is to help our poultry producers so we can invest and sacrifice a little bit of the profit on that regard and do the research and make sure that this type of bacteria have this permanent interaction with the immunocells, especially, like I said, this bifidobacterium that drive bifidobacterial communities at the site where the pair patches are. So I would say that this type of bacteria is the one that will help you, and that is essential for the gut to have the right development. I'm not saying the other ones are bad. I'm not saying that. They are good, but they have different mode of actions as well.
Absolutely. Loud and clear. Louise, in your comments, you've already mentioned twice the economic concerns, the cost of production in the poultry industry. Obviously, that's something that's very important. What can we say when it comes to probiotics? What is the return on investment of these types of solutions?
As we were talking about Poultry Star hatchery today, and what we have seen in the market right now, as it is the single application of Poultry Star hatchery by the first day of age, is giving you a return of investment of 4.8 to 1. So it's above the rule that it has to be at least 4. So at least we're close there. And it brings you a great benefits. Not only that, but also in later on, because the effect is, unless there is a very stressful challenge in the barn, is carried throughout the cycle. But we always stress to use or to complement with the application of the ME product in the feed or the soluble product in the water in order to achieve better results. So yeah, that's what I can tell you in terms of Poultry Star hatchery. Yeah, Fernando, you have also experience in the field.
Yeah, anyhow, the target is always gut health and you need colonization. So I will say that for this purpose, where you want a good gut colonization, we need probiotics which are quota specific. So basically, you are anticipating, as we repeat a lot of times, we are anticipating what should happen naturally. Rather than that, you're not really colonizing the tract.
Yeah, and remember, it takes up to 21 days to have a maturation in the microbiota, or to have an of the microbiota, at least by the midsection of the gut. So some birds in Asia have 28 days before they go to slaughtering. So the time is very narrow in order to have this maturation and stabilization of the microbiome.
So you can
we have a very relevant.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a very relevant question along those lines, Louise.
Okay.
So if it's on average 21 days, how much can Poultry Star accelerate the colonization of beneficial bacteria in the gut? Are you able to quantify the number of days it takes for the strains applied with Poultry Star at day 1, how long for them to colonize?
It is actually almost immediately. We have had this. We haven't done it with Poultry Star hatchery because that's the next step that we're doing in the 3rd trial. But we try already with Poultry Star Sol application at the hatchery. We have measured after 1 day and after 3 days the relative abundance of bifidobacterium, and we have seen that if you don't use this probiotic, you cannot recover bifidobacterium in the gut. And we have done it in the sections of the gut, not just in the drop-ins. So you can see that the bacteria are actually colonizing, and through the days they are actually proliferating. So the amount of bacteria increases. So, but these we can keep some small numbers of bifidobacterial communities, but we need a constant stimulus or a use of Poultry Star ME or Sol, as I was saying, in order to keep this bacterium target, because it's very sensible. So any changes in the environment or any stress can actually kill this type of bacteria.
Remember, the bird is growing. So for the first 2-3 weeks, exponentially, very fast, and the intestine is growing. So more sites are gaining ground. So you need recolonizing. That's why it's explained that.
Absolutely. So start early and start often, right? In a way.
Continuous colonization until it's established.
So we've also had a couple of questions here, and this is going to be another one for Louise. You've mentioned different forms of Poultry Star. This regards application, right? So is there a best method to get the most effect out of this type of product? Is it through the feed? Is it drinking water? Can you apply this if you're doing extrusion, pelleting, that sort of thing?
So you see me smiling because I will tell you what happens in the market. Different groups side with different products. Fernando is a vet, and he will not let me lie. Most of the vets, they like Poultry Star Sol. Poultry Star Sol is highly concentrated product that is used in pulses. And this one gives you the flexibility that can be used when you see the onset of early dysbiosis, as he was talking before. So this is a soluble version. Then you also have the microencapsulated version, Poultry Star ME. That's the one that, as you were mentioning, is using the feed and also can be pelletized. So this microcapsule gives or confers that protection to the bacteria in order to help the bacteria to go through this pelletization process. And we have the concentrated versions of both of them that you can actually use in premixes in the case of Poultry Star ME, or in hatchery applications if you already have hatchery equipment and you have Poultry Star hatchery as well, in addition of the organic line. So yeah, you can use this in different stages, and it depends on the recommendation that people like Fernando gives you in order to use it in commercial application.
Absolutely. So very appreciative for that overview on that response. We've got time for just one final one before we're going to wrap up our session. And so I wanted to talk about how do you judge, we talked about ROI, so the return on investment of this type of product, but what parameters should people be looking at in terms of evaluating whether a product is effective or not? So in the case of Poultry Star, how do we know that it's working? What levers does that push? What results do we typically tend to see? And this question is raised because some people tend to be skeptical with certain products, such as probiotics, when they'll see an inconsistent benefit in their operation. So it's a little bit of the background of the question, but the main question there is, what are the parameters to evaluate the efficacy of a probiotic or a symbiotic?
For which one was?
Fernando, you can go ahead. You have the experience in the market.
I would say when I watch a flock, any flock, uniformity, because uniformity means gut health is uniform, of course. So as far I see that the flock is growing homogeneously, it means gut health is in good condition. When I check the litter conditions get better because it's drier. There's less pathogens affecting digestibility. And most of the times what we find, I would say, clinically, is just wet feces. It's not an infection. Most of the time when people watch diarrhea, they think, well, I gotta use an antibiotic, they are sick. Maybe they are not sick. It's digestibility that is already challenged. Not because the feed, it could be, but not most of the time because the feed is not good. It's because there's too much colonization with the wrong bacteria, and that affects digestibility and inflammation and so on. So I would say the most easiest factor to watch is uniformity. And of course, indirectly, FCRs, growth will be influenced positively. It doesn't mean probiotics are performers or growth performer, but they will do it once they established a beneficial macroflora indirectly. That's the aim.
Just to complement, and I agree 100% to what you said, Fernando, because uniformity of the flock is a must sometimes, especially in these combined systems. And I was talking before, we have now the experience, a lot of experience in Asia regarding the uniformity of the flocks, especially with the females. Another thing can be condemnation at the slaughtering, so there will be less because there will be less burn chest or hocks because of excessive ammonia. We can also, I'm not saying that's the direct effect of Poultry Star, but it's an indirect effect of having a good microbiota. Then we also have what it is in markets out of Europe where they want to export to here, less condemnations because of Salmonella contamination, and in Europe because of Campylobacter and so on. So there we can see benefits from the product.
At the end, there's less bacterial translocation. This is the aim. Uniformity comes because of that. There's less bacterial translocation to affect the gut fragile epithelium.
Excellent. I want to thank you both for that. Thank you for your insights today. This has been a riveting discussion. Still a lot of interest, a lot of questions coming in. As I said, our Biomin reps are on hand in order to reach out to you if we didn't get to your question today. But Fernando, Luis, let me thank both of you for your time and input in today's session.
Thank you.
It's great having you.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank our audience as well. You could do us a favor by please providing your feedback as soon as this session ends. There's a short minute survey. It takes a minute or two to give us your input on what you think we could do to improve the session, suggest future topics for additional sessions, and you can also contact your Biomin representative if you'd like to discuss this or any other topic related to your operation in the future. On behalf of Biomin, I want to thank you all for your joining. Stay safe, and we will speak to you again soon at the next Antibiotic Reduction Expert Series. Take care.
See you. Bye-bye.